This is a true incident from my life, even if it sounds like a scene out of a film. I was 24 when it happened, and by the end, I had taught myself that choosing yourself is not drama, it's discipline. The silver 4 and 0 candles trembled on a buttercream sheet cake under string lights on an East Austin rooftop when my boyfriend lifted his champagne and told the crowd, deadpan, camera ready, that I was turning 40. Laughter ricocheted off the concrete planters and the low glass rail. Someone blew a party horn that rasped like a kazoo as a banner reading "Over the Hill" sagged behind the bar. A Bluetooth speaker thumped a Hall & Oates playlist put on, ironically, the kind of playlist you put on when you want to make fun of a decade you don't remember. I stared at the cake, fondant peonies, edible glitter, and felt my face heat, like the whole city could see me from across I-35. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. He'd planned it meticulously. A birthday roast, he'd called it all week, insisting it would be hilarious content, a wink at how I drink decaf after 3 p.m. and prefer bookstores to clubs. Miles had a way of making cruelty marketable. He ran a boutique creative shop out of a co-working space near South Congress and walked like every sidewalk was a runway. He wore white sneakers no one else could keep clean, and a single silver chain that flashed whenever he threw his head back to laugh at his own jokes. He was 29 going on legend, a minor king of Austin micro-influencers, the guy who knew the owner at every new bar and who treated the H-E-B self-checkout like a stage. The cake sat on a lucite pedestal with a sharp, clear knife beside it. The knife caught a filament of string light and haloed it. I could see my face warped in the blade. Young, not 40, not even close. I could smell grilled poblano from the taco station, hear the cling-ting of a spoon knocked into a glass, the shifts of bodies as people arranged their phones to film. The rooftop heater clanked as it kicked on, a hollow steel sound. The sky was violet blue, Austin in late October, warm enough to sweat in a denim jacket, and there, on a paper place card, lettered in faux calligraphy, my name, Eliza, 40. A joke, a script that made me the punchline. I didn't argue with the joke because I had learned arguing turns you into an extra in someone else's content. I smiled the way girls smile when we're trying to keep blood in our cheeks. I let him kiss my knuckles, his breath warm, tequila soft. I found an Etsy shop for those candles, he whispered. Authentic boomer font. You'll love it. I could feel the phone in my jacket pocket where my agent's email still sat starred from that morning. Congrats, Eliza. The offer is in. $250K. North American rights, hardcover lead, spring list. My own tiny miracle. Signed at a two-top in Bennu coffee, my hand shaking so much I almost spilled oat latte on the DocuSign screen. That morning, I'd become the woman I'd been working toward since sophomore year, creative nonfiction at UT, a girl who could make shape of her pain and sell it without selling herself. By evening, I was the geriatric girlfriend at her 40th, a punchline eating a slice of buttercream while her boyfriend smirked over her head. Let me back up. No, scratch that. Let me sharpen. Because the cake wasn't the first cut. It was the ribbon on a package I should have opened months earlier. It began, as so many stupid tragedies do, with a notification I wasn't meant to see. A rideshare receipt popped up on Miles's iPad while he was in our bathroom razoring stubble into the suggestion of a beard. Thanks for riding with Lyft, it said in a cheerful font. Drop off South Congress Hotel, 1:43 a.m. I felt the little click in my brain like the moment when a camera lens finally focuses. The night before, he'd told me he and his boys had been at the White Horse on the east side till closing. He had gotten home at 3, maybe, smelling of vanilla body spray that wasn't mine and smoke from a patio without ashtrays. I'd asked about it. Light, casual, You end up at SoCo now? I'd said, an eyebrow barely lifted, while I set a Mason's mug from Magnolia Cafe in the dish rack. He didn't miss a beat. He never missed beats. Oh, we put Ben in a lift, he said, naming someone I'd never met and probably didn't exist. You know how he gets. Then he winked like he'd spun hay into gold, like the whole world was clay to him, and I should be grateful to be molded. After that, there were more. A Starbucks gift card email for Maddie that he said was for a client. A reek of the hotel shampoo I know is stocked at the line. The way my Find My Friends pinged his phone around the domain when he said he was in South Lamar, as if there were two Austins, and he toggled between them like we flip camera lenses. It wasn't one smoking gun. It was more like glitter. You think you've cleaned it up, and then you find it months later in your sock drawer. He erased some texts, left others perfectly innocuous, like LOL for sure. He pruned the story, created negative space so my brain would fill in the rest with a kinder narrative, as if I were helping him design the theater where I sat. This is the part where people ask, why didn't you leave then? As if our hearts are emergency exits with lighted signs, as if smoke doesn't so often look like fog. I was 2 years out of college, freelancing copy for a fitness app that wanted to sound like it was nagging you gently. Rent was a monthly cliff. My parents lived in San Antonio and thought Austin was a stopover on my way to a real life. I was terrified of being alone in a city where everyone seemed to be on a patio laughing into their Aperol. And then there was him with his plans and his podcasts and his way of pointing at things and saying, this place is about to be something. It is dangerously easy to confuse a person like that with the future. I told myself I was collecting evidence because I wanted to be fair, but collecting evidence becomes its own performance. You start narrating your life like you're the DA in a courtroom drama. Exhibit A, a black hoodie in the backseat of his car that smelled like Chanel Chance. He said it was Zara's. My roommate's, she laughed so hard milk came out her nose. Exhibit B, a hotel folio emailed to his public address by accident, 2 nights under a corporate rate, roses in Shandon package. Client, he said, a whiskey brand activation for older women. It's a thing. He kept the roses on our counter for 3 days and never once said they were for me. Exhibit C, the way he pulled his phone to his chest like he was protecting a child when it buzzed after midnight. Villains never walk into the story wearing capes. They arrive in sneakers and hold your hand and make your friends laugh. Miles's power was social gravity. In any room aligned to him were cashmere and camera lenses. He'd turned the East Side bartender at his favorite speakeasy into a videographer. Within 6 weeks, he got a coffee cart at a yoga studio to rebrand themselves by telling their story, which meant he filmed women in leggings hugging in slow motion to Coldplay. He knew everyone's first name and the name they wished to be called. He was what happens when charisma learns spreadsheets. He also understood something about the internet that I, cautious and bookish, had never absorbed. If you punch down and then make it a bit, people will laugh along and call it satire. And if anyone flinches in the back row, you call them soft. He'd roasted me before, in captions, in TikToks with trending sounds, just little jabs about my old lady soul, my habit of carrying a book in my tote, my refusal to go out after 11. I told myself that if I laughed with people, it would sting less. There are so many tiny humiliations you will swallow because you're afraid of the big one, the humiliation of being alone. What I didn't know was that the big humiliation was waiting anyway, in the shape of 2 glitter candles and a rented rooftop with a skyline view. I did what I always do when I'm hurt. I watched. Watching is how I write. It's the only way I know how to fight. I cut a perfect rectangle of cake and ate the bite with the corner of the 0, chewing down sugar grit like I was crushing glass. People came up to clap my shoulder and wink. 40 looks good on you, girl. Cougar! We love a vintage queen. Miles guided a circle of his creative bro friends through a toast circle in which each man took a turn making a short speech about how Eliza has this old soul wisdom, like she's lived 1,000 lives, and Eliza is basically a mom to all of us. One even did a bit about needing to cut my food for me. The camera phone ring lights reflected in their eyeballs, luminous portals to a universe where everything is content. When Miles handed me the knife, I didn't make a wish. I cut the cake clean, as if precision could protect me. He kissed my temple with the camera rolling and said into my hair, "You're ageless, babe." I saw his phone screen in the reflection off the bar's metal drip tray, his DMs arranged like teeth. A name lit up, Maddie. I watched the notification preview, Miss You. I watched him flick his thumb to mute it. Before the candles that morning, I'd ridden a Lime scooter to Bennu because the day felt like static and I needed a ritual to ground it. The coffee shop was cool and smelled like nutmeg and printer ink. I sat in the corner under the big floor plant that always looks like it's sighing and opened my email. Subject, offer. The dollar amount made me press my hand to my chest. 250. Commas placed like stepping stones across a creek I've been trying to cross for years. The book I hadn't told Miles the title of because he'd insisted on branding it, and I wanted my words nameless, hidden until they were bound, was no longer a file on my desktop. It was a real thing with paper and a list and marketing dollars and a pub season. When I signed, I cried at a table sticky with simple syrup. The barista, a boy in a beanie with an Ellen Page haircut, slid me extra napkins and didn't ask what was wrong. Only later did I think. Something that right should not have to hide. I went home and put the new contract in a manila folder. I slid that folder under the cracked wooden board in my closet floor that the landlord never fixed. Ritual, again, making a place for the important thing. Then I showered. I pressed a vintage black dress I found at a Goodwill on Burnett Road because my mother always told me, cotton will do what you tell it. I did a winged liner the way Zara had taught me in our bathroom mirror, the two of us shoulder to shoulder like soldiers before a battle we didn't choose. Zara knew. She'd hated him from month 3 when he told her she was the reason women can't collaborate after she asked him to stop leaving his shoes in our living room. "He's butter on toast," she'd said, sliding on sandals. "Tastes good the first bite, then it's just fat." When I told her about the cake, she said, "If he puts numbers on a dessert for you that you don't own, I will develop a medical condition that makes me spill wine." She offered to stay home. I asked her to come. The worst part of humiliation isn't the pain. It's being alone with it. On the rooftop, she hovered like a satellite in a committed, orbiting rage. I saw her eyes soften when she saw me look at the candles, and I knew she was doing trigonometry, calculating angles for exits, weighing the odds of a table flip versus a quiet Irish goodbye. She mouthed, "You okay?" I nodded and mouthed, "Later. Humiliation, check. Betrayal, check. Now, the part where I stop being the girl who collects exhibits and start being the girl who writes endings." A week earlier, I'd found a receipt in our kitchen trash. He had ripped it in half, but a ripped thing still knows its other half. I put the jagged edges together on the counter like a puzzle. It was from a boutique in SoCo that sells gold hoop earrings and bottles of perfume shaped like little busts. The line item read, Baccarat Rouge 540, Travel. I inhaled. That scent was in our sheets that week. A sugared firework. He had told me it was a new laundry detergent. I took a picture of the receipt before dropping it back into the trash. Evidence is a seed. You don't show it to anyone until it's a tree. Then there was the intern. I didn't know about her until I went to drop off Miles's iPad at his co-working spot because he'd forgotten it and texted that he needed it urgent, all caps. The front desk guy, Lucas, knew me. We'd once commiserated about the free La Croix being always the bad flavors. When I walked in, Lucas's face did a little flicker before he smoothed it like meringue. People betray you with their faces before their mouths. He said, "Oh, hey, Eliza." But he glanced to the lounge, where a young woman, 19 maybe, hair in a messy bun, wearing a sweatshirt with a Greek letters crest, was typing on a laptop with an Apple sticker. She had a tiny bumblebee tattoo behind her ear. Maddie. She looked from the laptop to me, and then, with a speed like she'd practiced it, turned the laptop so the screen was toward the couch. It was generous in a way, like she was shielding me, or maybe protecting herself. Either way, I saw the angle of the keyboard and recognized a DM window before it vanished, Instagram's gray-blue. I've learned the shapes of the weapons used on me. Intern, Lucas said later when I came back downstairs after leaving the iPad on Miles's desk. He said it like excuse, like it fixed what it named. Lots of guys have interns. I nodded, like it wasn't dynamite. The day after the rooftop, I went hunting, not on his phone, not in his email. I went hunting for policies. People like Miles think charisma exempts them from rules. Policies are where charisma goes to die. I found the co-working space's code of conduct. I found his agency's brand guidelines. I found the incubator's ethics statement for member companies. He had bragged about their mentorship once, the way people brag about CrossFit. I found the section that read, "No romantic or sexual relationships between company leadership and interns. No professional retaliation in response to rejection." I printed it at the public library like a 90-year-old, paying 8 cents a page, each sheet warm in my hands like a promise. At the library printer, across from a teenager doing math homework on a cracked Chromebook, I felt something settle inside me like a jar lid finally tightening. I emailed my agent, "Can we talk about boundaries for publicity?" She wrote back in seconds. Yes. I emailed the incubator's anonymous hotline with a measured, factual account, dates, names, screenshots of DMs that weren't mine but were sent to me by a girl I DM'd myself, asking if she was okay. Maddie wrote back at 2 a.m. He said I was mature for my age. I told him I didn't want to, and he said my internship would be weird if I didn't. I asked her permission to include her statement. She said yes, but only if I didn't use her last name. I promised I would keep her human while making him accountable. Collecting this wasn't a binge of spite, it was a ritual of clarity. I learned to save files to a cloud folder with a bland name, Tax Docs 2023, because men like him search for drama. I learned to take screenshots with timestamps. I learned that HR departments do not work miracles, but will leap when faced with liability. Liability, in corporate, is poetry. Speak it correctly, and even the unsympathetic listen. Meanwhile, Miles escalated the roast as content. He posted a reel of me blowing out the 40 candles in slow motion to a pop remix of Time After Time. The caption read, "Find you a girl who looks this good at 40. I watched the comments swing below the line like a hanging bridge. Some of his followers tagged their friends and said goals. Some played along, "What's your anti-aging routine?" One woman wrote, "Weird to age shame your GF?" And Miles replied with a clown emoji, and "We all need to laugh more." I pinned that comment, took a screenshot. I didn't respond out loud because everything I said in public in that time belonged to my future book. My agent had already asked me whether my boyfriend would be in it. "Don't tell him yet," she said, pragmatic. "Let the work be the work." But once the contract was real, once the money had made a thud in my checking account like a cinder block, I felt my spine crack into alignment. I was allowed to own my story. Owning it didn't require I be cruel. It required I be precise. The plan wasn't to blast him online. Revenge is cheaper when you do it for clicks. I wanted my revenge to be expensive. First, the apartment. Our lease had a clause that I had read when we moved in because I read everything. It said if one tenant vacated due to relationship dissolution, the remaining tenant had 30 days to assume full rent or vacate. If he failed, the lease defaulted to the landlord without penalty to the leaver. Translation, if I left smart, he either covered the full rent or lost the place. I made an appointment with the leasing office at Skyloft on West 21st, the student high-rise with a gym that smelled like grapefruit. The leasing agent, a woman with acrylics like tiny paintings, said, "We can get your name off within the week if you can show a new address." I put down a deposit on a studio on East 6th that was above a guitar repair shop and smelled like cedar. I transferred the utilities into his name. I put the espresso machine, mine, into a box. I set aside the cast iron pan, our pan, but really my pan because his idea of cleaning was running hot water over grease and whispering at it. Second, the work. I compiled a packet and sent it to the incubator's ethics email and CC'd their general counsel. I attached Maddie's statement, with her permission, my screenshots of DMs where he compared interns like wines, the code of conduct pages, and a short, clear summary that included dates, times, and the names of 2 other interns who had refused and then found their opportunities evaporate. I sent a separate, similar packet to a reporter at the Texas Tribune who covers workplace politics in tech and culture. We'd met when I freelanced a piece about a campus housing scandal. I sent a final packet to the co-working space manager with a note. I am informing you to protect myself from any retaliation related to my tenancy or account access. Third, the finale. I learned that his agency had been hired to run a charity gala at the Long Center, a Founders for Futures event, to raise money for tech scholarships. The MC would be a local weatherman who smiled like toothpaste. There would be a video montage of Women in Tech, produced by Miles, featuring interns he'd made cry. Tickets were $250 and came with mini lobster rolls and a photo in front of a neon sign that read, "This is going to be fun." I bought a ticket with my own money. It was a sick extravagance, but I wanted to look into his eyes when the future turned. The night of the gala, I wore the same black dress from the rooftop, like an echo of a spell, and Zara wore a suit she'd borrowed from her cousin that made her look like she could fire people ethically. We entered through a glassed-in lobby where volunteers in lanyards handed out programs and seltzers. The skyline poured itself like honey across Lady Bird Lake. The room smelled like hairspray and hors d'oeuvres. Miles spotted us and did that face like he hadn't expected me to show, even though he'd tagged me in the invite. He walked over, arms wide, performing forgiveness for anyone watching. "You made it," he said, as if I might be late to his triumph. He looked clean and unreal, his white sneaks new, his chain catching the light. "Be nice," he added low, his smile not moving. "A lot of important people are here." "I'm always nice," I said, and meant it, though my heart was a hummingbird against my ribs. The montage rolled 40 minutes in. The screen hung like a moon above a stage that had hosted ballets and awards and marriages. Music swooned, an instrumental cover of something millennial. Faces flashed, women typing, women laughing in slow motion, a woman closing her eyes to breathe while a man explained something to her. Words scrolled, empowerment, mentorship, future. Then the feed glitched, a beat, a hush. The screen blacked and came back up, but not with new montage. It returned with photos of a very pretty girl in a UT sweatshirt, smiling shyly at the camera, then texts overlaid, his words, "You're different. You get me. Don't be weird about it." Another slide, the ethics policy page I'd printed, the paragraph about relationships circled in red. Another, a calendar screenshot with 2 a.m. meetings. Then, finally, the anonymous hotline form, a sample, not mine but generic, blurred except for the line, "I don't know who to tell." It was not my doing. There's a point at which the machine moves without you. I had sent the packet the week before with no suggestion of a public intervention. I'd asked only for an investigation. The incubator had escalated, and the Gala AV crew, bless their procedural hearts, had taken We need to replace your montage with a compliance PSA before the funding call to give as a task with a due time of 8:40 p.m. They had done what they do, their job. For a moment, the room made a sound like fabric tearing, gasps, a plastic cup buckling. The weatherman's smile froze and then reanimated itself into concern. He said words like, "so important," and "space for accountability," and "take a moment." Miles stood there, arms at his sides, palms forward, the pose of a man trying to conjure innocence with posture. His eyes were flat. He found me in the crowd as if I had done the lights. He mouthed, "What did you do?" I tilted my head and mouthed back, "Nothing you didn't." He didn't find his smile again. He pretended to take a call and left the side of the stage with the speed of a man who has built a brand on entrances. People noticed him leaving in the way they notice a missing picture frame. The scholarship appeal still happened. Phones still hovered over the QR codes on the program. Money still flowed. Accountability and philanthropy shared a room like they always do. After the speeches, I stayed seated. I sipped my seltzer. I watched the donors make small circles near the potted trees, as if the scandal were weather and they were waiting it out under eaves. I watched Maddie walk in, chin high, in a dress that made her look her age in the most disobedient way. She took a seat near the aisle and held her phone in her lap like a talisman. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. A tremor ran through the room like a rumor. Someone was being asked for a statement near the stage doors. Someone had printed emails. I felt no glee. I felt relief, like clean water in my lungs. He texted that night, "You have no idea what you've done. I will sue." Then, "Please, we can discuss." Then, "You've ruined my life." Then, an hour later, "I love you." The way they cycle through scripts when one doesn't land is its own kind of theater. I set my phone on Do Not Disturb and slid it face down under the manila folder in my new place. That folder, the contract inside it, hummed like a secret hearth. In the days after, the incubator sent a short public statement about reviewing allegations. His agency account, which he'd built to 80,000 followers by posting carousels about branding confidence, posted nothing for the longest 12 hours of its life. The co-working space revoked his access, while they looked into multiple reports. The Texas Tribune reporter asked for an on-the-record comment. I said, "Meow, my story is in my book." She asked when it was out. I said, "Next spring," and she whistled. My agent emailed, "Proud of you. How can we support you beyond legal?" I sent back a one-line note, "I'm good," and I meant it even if my hand still shook when I made coffee. He showed up at my old apartment at noon the following Sunday, pounding like he could push the door open with noise. He discovered the lock stopped him. He called. I let it go to voicemail. The message was a man tap dancing on 3 emotions in 1 minute. Zara put on a playlist that was all women we loved, singing like they meant it. We opened the windows. Someone downstairs smoked weed that smelled like a meadow. I boxed up the last of my books, my hands arranging paperbacks like birds, spines all aligned the way you make a life a library. The final chapter of Revenge was not public. I made a copy of the lease clause and hand-delivered it to the building office with my change of address letter. I forwarded the utilities emails. I removed my name from the internet plan that had always been in mine because he once said the website frustrated him. I left him the couch. I didn't want to take the furniture where I'd learned to ignore texts. I took the lamp my mother gave me freshman year, cheap and yellow like a beam of comfort. I left the key and kept my dignity. When I finally posted, it was not a drag, not a thread. It was a photo. Me at my new studio's kitchen counter, a galley the width of my arm span, cutting an orange with my own knife on my own cutting board. The caption read, "Signed a book deal the morning someone threw me a mock 40th. I'm 24. I'm in the oldest relationship I've ever had. With my own mind, we're doing great." The comments were not a roar. They were a warm room. Friends from college, A professor who once wrote on a paper, "Trust the spine of your sentences." My mother from San Antonio, my brave girl. Even Maddie liked it. That was enough. There was no lawsuit. He hired a crisis PR firm that gave him lines like learning and growing, nuance, and consenting adults, which was interesting because the adults were the nuance. The interns found new internships at places that sent them welcome emails with emojis and paid them for their time. The incubator removed Miles's agency from their mentorship roster. The co-working space politely did not renew his membership. He moved to a cheaper apartment north of the river and posted stories in which he chopped onions in a kitchen without light. A month later, I did a reading at Book People, in the side room that smells like paper and hope. It wasn't the book yet. It was an essay I'd written about the smell of hotel shampoo and the danger of the venerating gaze. I read into a microphone that made my voice sound taller. People sat in folding chairs and breathed with me. After, a girl hugged me too long and cried into my shoulder. "He told me I was too much," she said, shaking. "You are," I said, "the way you speak to a fire. That's the point." At my studio, late that night, I lay on a mattress on the floor because my bed frame wouldn't arrive for another week, and watched a balloon, one of those cheap ones you buy at H-E-B, bump the textured ceiling. It was silver, left over from a neighbor's birthday that the teenagers living upstairs had tied to our railing, and the knot had slid into my hands because gravity loves a girl with a plan. It bumped and bumped and bumped. I laughed until I cried. In the half-dark, the knot loosened. The balloon exhaled and drifted down like a parachute. It kissed the floorboards and lay still. I rolled over and faced my kitchen, its one window admitting an Austin streetlight glow like syrup, and thought, "You cannot hold air hostage. Eventually, it leaves." In the morning, I woke up before my phone. I made coffee on the stove, the kind that makes the whole apartment smell like you belong somewhere. I opened my laptop and wrote sentences that understood me. I walked to the river and saw a man running in a t-shirt from some 5K that raised money for something. He looked like someone I might have used to love. He looked like nobody. I kept walking. A heron stood very still in the shallows like it was listening. I listened too and heard my future talking to me in the even voice of a friend. The book is not a tell-all. It's a tell-truth. It is about power and performance, about how we rehearse ourselves to fit inside men's stories and how we miscast ourselves and then call it love. It's about what money can't fix and what it can. Rent, a sense of legitimate existence, the ability to say no without worrying, you'll starve. It's about the rooftop, yes, but it's also about the library printer, the 8-cent page, the way a policy can be a rope thrown out a window for you to climb. People still ask why I didn't slap him, why I didn't scream on the rooftop, why I didn't smash the cake into his face until his smirk was sticky with sugar. Because I wanted a life, not a scene. Because legal revenge lasts longer. Because humiliating someone in front of people who came to drink under string lights would have made me as small as he tried to make me. I wanted off his stage. I wanted to build my own. Months later, on a humid night, during South by, when the city felt like a battery humming, I was at a reading in the back of a bar that served drinks in mason jars, not because it was cute, but because they didn't have enough glassware. I stood up and read the section about the 40 candles without saying his name. I said, I let him do it because I wanted to see who laughed. A woman in a denim jacket at the back made a sound that was almost a growl. After, she came up to me and said, I laughed at the wrong things for years. I said, me too. We clinked our jar glasses like pilgrims. I walked home along East 6th under a street lamp that hummed like a friendly refrigerator. At my door I found a package, a galley of my book, brown cover, my name printed like it had money. I carried it inside, like you carry a baby, and set it on the counter where my own knife lay, clean and dry. Sometimes I think about the rooftop, The way the Austin sky looked like someone had ironed it. I think about the over-the-hill banner drooping where the tape had failed. About the knife blade reflecting my face. I think about how a cake is an edible clock. You cut it, you eat the hours, and then it's gone. I imagine that knife now in the drawer of the bar, lying beside bottle openers and corkscrews, waiting. Tools don't have morals, they just wait to be used. We are the ones who decide what we cut and what we keep whole. In my studio, I keep the manila folder on the top shelf of my closet now, not hidden. Inside, the contract pages sit heavy and benign, as if they were always mine. Some nights, when my brain's electricity is too loud, I take it down and read my name where the money sits beside it like a polite dog. I say thank you under my breath to the girl who signed it at a sticky table that morning, hands shaking, and to the later girl who ate cake and did not publicly die. When people ask how old I am now, I say my real number. I say it like a password that opens doors. I tell them I once celebrated a 40th. I hadn't earned, and that the joke belonged to the man who planned it. They laugh and then go quiet. The way you do after a door slams in another apartment, sudden silence. I don't fill it. I let silence be a room I built with my own hands, where I can go any hour and lie down. Sometimes I pass the rooftop from street level and look up. You can't see the string lights from the sidewalk, only the glow they make, a suggestion of a party. I stand there a minute and watch strangers' silhouettes tilt toward each other. I wonder which of them are kind. I wonder which of them will make themselves kings and hand out crowns shaped like numbers. I hope the girls have friends who know policies, who will hold their hands at printers and teach them how to make good coffee and sit with them until their shaking stops. I am not the woman he tried to write. I am the woman I write. The morning of the cake, I signed for $250,000. That's not the point, but it is a point. Money isn't love, and it isn't justice, but it is possibility, and possibility is a door that doesn't slam. I keep it open. I stand in it in my bare feet and feel Austin heat raise little sparks in my skin. I hold my book in both hands and feel its weight. It is heavy enough to stay where I set it down. It is light enough to carry when I go. I go. The end.